As this is my first time addressing the Dáil since my maternity leave, I hope you'll indulge me in saying a few thank yous. First of all, I want to thank my colleagues in the Social Democrats for their ongoing support, and I would like to say a special thank you to our Deputy Leader, Cian O'Callaghan, for stepping in during my maternity leave. I would like to say a heartfelt thank you to the people of Cork South West for re-electing me. And Ceann Comhairle, I would also like to acknowledge the loss this weekend of Councillor Patrick Gerard Murphy in our area and convey my condolences to his family. He was an outstanding disability advocate and he worked tirelessly for the Bantry area. He will be sorely missed. Taoiseach, today I want to speak to you about disability. Despite all of the promises that we heard during the election, disabled people and their families are still being let down. During the election, you said that disability would be, and I quote, a top priority for your government. You also said your government would lead a step change in the level and scale of support for people with disabilities. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Nearly 16,000 children now overdue an assessment of need. Essential therapies and supports still almost non-existent, and hundreds of children are still left in agony waiting for spinal surgeries. The harsh truth is, and Taoiseach, I take no pleasure in saying this, the only things that disabled people are guaranteed by your government are broken promises and a waiting list. Despite the 2017 promise that no child would wait more than 4 months for scoliosis treatment, children like Harvey Morris and Sharat have suffered years of delays, trauma and pain. Harvey waited years for the care that he needed, only receiving surgery last November when the curve in his spine had reached 130 degrees, causing his rib cage to twist around his lungs and heart, restricting his breathing. After Harvey tragically passed away, his mother said all he wanted was his iPad, hunky-dories, the odd lollipop and timely access to healthcare. Harvey's parents, Gillian and Stephen, and thousands of parents like them around this country have had to watch their children go for years without the intervention that they need, feeling helpless and hopeless in the face of an uncaring system, knowing that every day means their children are further at risk of never reaching their full potential. Taoiseach, children are denied services and prevented from reaching their full potential at every step of the way. We're talking about the difference between a child being able to learn to speak or not, being able to communicate. The difference for somebody being able to live an independent life or not. When disabled people become adults, any meagre supports they had vanish.
Thank you.
We have the lowest employment rates for disabled people in the EU, and 1 in 5 disabled people in Ireland live in poverty. It is nothing short of shameful.
Thank you.
Taoiseach, will you ensure that children waiting on spinal surgeries will finally get the treatment that they need? And can you at least acknowledge that this government is not living up to the commitments that it made?
Thank you, Deputy. Indulged.
Well, first of all, I take the opportunity to welcome you back, Deputy, and looking forward to our continued engagements. And I think we both share, a love of West Cork, and I think the people of West Cork, in terms of their representatives, in terms of, have vote in terms of quality and calibre and so forth. I'm going to miss Deputy Cian O'Callaghan, and I want to thank Deputy O'Callaghan for his forensic engagement over the last while. And may I also thank you for your tributes to Councillor Patrick Gerard Murphy, who colleague of ours, and we're in deep sadness because Patrick Gerard was a wonderful individual. And the definition of what public representation at local level means, a man of great deep insight, commitment and care and compassion, and great courage and bravery as well in terms of his own personal life and as a public representative. When we said that disability is a top priority of this government, it is. And I accept fully that there are shortcomings in respect, to say the least, in some areas, particularly in spinal surgery, particularly in the area of assessment of need and in terms of the availability of therapies. On the other hand, it is important to create the other side of the narrative as well, of unrelenting investment in additional needs, particularly, for example, in education over the last number of years, and exponential growth in services. And if you take education alone now, the state investment is about 2.9 billion in 2025. That's 48% of an increase since 2020. That's over a quarter of the entire Department of Education budget. We now have 23,000 special needs assistants working in our schools, up 43% in the last 5 years. We added 1,600 SNAs this year alone, 21,000 special education teachers. Again, the special classes have doubled, the number of special classes, to 3,700 plus. We've had 16 new special schools established in the last number of years. 407 new special classes sanctioned for 25-26. Now, that represents and reflects investment. It still isn't enough. Our population, as I said earlier, is growing very significantly. And if you look at the last two censuses, the most recent one showed a marked increase in the numbers identifying with a disability, both in terms of children and in terms of adults. And that means we have to not just increase resources, but also systemically change as well. And to be fair to Minister Helen McEntee and Ministers Michael Moynihan, they're already working to change the system in respect of children with additional needs and their families applying for places in schools in terms of a centralised application system being piloted, and in terms of now being brought forward the time to apply 4 months earlier, so that we have a better lead time to the subsequent September. I'll come back on the other points later.
Taoiseach, you tell us about increased investment and that disability is a priority. But even when it comes to something relatively simple, if we use the example of recognising the cost of disability and addressing it, your government manages to somehow spectacularly miss the mark. So, the 2021 report calculated the additional cost of disability to be at €236 per week. What was the government's response to that? A one-off payment of €400, as if having a disability is some kind of a one-off minor inconvenience. According to the RSI and IREC, the cost of disability is now up to €875 per week. One-off payments aren't only grossly insufficient, they're insulting. Tens of thousands of disabled people live in poverty, with nearly 76% of disabled people in Ireland at risk of poverty. Taoiseach, you say disability is a priority, but you've published a national disability strategy that lacks any ambition, lacks a budget and lacks any timelines.
Thank you,
we have more than enough reports. What we need is action. One question. Can you tell us, will you introduce a cost of disability payment in the budget?
Thank you, Deputy.
First of all, I think your critique of the human rights strategy, the National Human Rights Strategy for Disabled Persons, is wrong. And there was significant participation of people with disabilities in the formulation, delivery and announcement of that strategy, and who enthusiastically participated in that. And structures have been created to follow through. So I think that's a kind of a cynical, poor response by you in terms of what was a genuine... No, sorry,
Deputy,
I'm just saying
it's not a back and forth.
No, I'm just saying I met with the people at the launch of the strategy. I've created a disability unit in my own department to drive change, and we're going to do it over the lifetime of this government, and we're going to do it. And it's right across the board. In terms of a cost of living, it's not as simple, and you know that. But there will be measures in the budget to help families who, with disabilities in terms of income supports. There will be measures in the budget in that respect.
Thank you.